The trip began with a rough start. After 3 months of delays, I booked my flight. My brother set shall we say, a hard guideline for how long he was happy with me visiting. The last time in the city, I meant to stay for a month, but I ended up staying for close to 3 months. Now he's happy with me visiting for a week. I booked my flight to the city for $380. I booked my flight to Vietnam for $544. Then my friend who invited me to Vietnam said, "By the way, you have to get your visa to enter the country." I had 5 days. That might have been enough time, but what did I know? Dick. That night, I tried to apply online, and the website doesn't allow for photos 2048 kilobytes or larger to be uploaded. The camera on this phone is really strong, so the photo quality was really high and took up lots of memory. I later found out there are ways to reduce the memory. Anyways, I decided I'll just delay the process by 2 days and go do it in person. I fly to the city. I checked the website and plan to go in on Friday. I had dinner with my brother and my mom, and it is lovely. I get the classic tonkatsu and a mango paradise roll. It's the best meal that I've had in a month. I get to the consulate of Vietnam and it's closed. The hours on the website and the hours on their door are completely different. I laid my jacket on the floor and sat on it. I began to think of how fucked I was and sat with that for a while. Then I began to email the consulate of Vietnam. After panicking, sadness, and stress, I never finished the email. A gentleman from the other door emerged, and he strode towards the elevator. I jumped up out of my funk and asked him some questions. He didn't know the answer, but he said to press the button to the consulate. I thanked him profusely and he stepped into the elevator. I rang the button and a lady spoke to me. We talked and she opened the door for me. She was in disbelief that I had bought a plane ticket before getting my visa. Her exact words were, "Why did you do that?" It was one of those cartoon moments. I would have fallen down laughing if I had not been crushed about having to rebook a more expensive flight with an additional 10 hours in an airport. I'm a bit germophobic. I don't specifically wake up and go, "My golly, I would love to be breathing the same air as thousands of people who just came from faraway places. I want everyone's breath in my mouth." It would have been hilarious at the time to literally anyone except me, who was set to miss my flight due to this. Ashamed and laughing, I explained that my friend told me to book the flight, and I did. Then afterwards he mentioned the visa. I didn't get to tell her I have traveled internationally about 7 times without ever needing a visa until this point. I wasn't offensive. Obviously I am irresponsible and not a well-seasoned traveler. It was just to share with her that this is one grande contributing factor. Normally, it costs 25 American dollars, but I asked if I could pay extra to have it done faster. She said I can, but it probably won't make it in time. I paid $130 and went about my way. On my way home, I stopped by a phone accessory kiosk. I asked the bloke if he has tempered glass for iPhone 13s. He did. I bought one from him and I even got a small one to cover the cameras. We talked for much longer than retail staff usually talk to you. But I like doing that. I want workers in their workplace to feel less alienation, less loneliness, less resent towards a job that brings a lot of frustration and unhappiness. I want to be a contrast to what retail workers experience en masse. I asked for his name. His name is Sammy. I say, "Thank you, Sammy." I stop by and I grab a chicken shawarma and head back to my brother's place. I get there. I finish my chicken shawarma. I update my brother about my visa situation and realize my iPhone case isn't on the phone anymore. Sammy must have forgotten to put it back on. Matthew laughs and suggests he did it on purpose. The Vietnam consulate is closed on the weekend. I consigned to waiting with little hope, stressed outedly. The worker at the consulate told me the chances that the visa will be ready to make it on time are pretty slim. I was like, shit! It'll cost hundreds more to change the flight and for a flight with hours that suck for me. I was choked. My mum agreed to have a dinner gathering at our house for me. I invited about 18 people. But these are friends from 2 years ago from when I lived locally. I have not kept in touch with them. I have not given them weeks of notice. I don't have door prizes, strippers hired, or a chocolate water fountain. But my mom tells me that she will make bison lasagna and salmon lasagna. I'm excited. One friend replies that she might come, one friend agrees to come, and my friend Callum, who just arrived back in Canada from Vietnam, agrees to come. That night, Callum is the only person who shows up. Let this be a testament to communists and people who study revolutionary theory. He was the only person who came to the dinner, and the dinner was still a spectacular success. He feasted, he shared lots with me about Vietnam, he shared hilarious and great stories. He mentioned he got stuck in Cambodia because he crossed below the north and wasn't permitted back into the country because he had a single entry visa. His parents found a company that guarantees same-day visas. I'm currently in Vietnam, and now I can see that Callum has cojones the size of watermelons to come to this country without being able to speak the language. Perhaps if this country was violent and capitalist, his cojones would be the size of yoga balls. Alas, watermelons. He said he went on a ton of tours and kept waiting for a magical moment to hit, but it never did. He rented a motorcycle and drove around. He is 9 years younger than me and have yet to find the courage to rent a motorbike and drive around a foreign country where I cannot speak the language. He drove 4 hours up some random road. He drove through a river, through a muddy embankment, and kept going. He felt that this random old road might be an old logging road, and that nothing interesting would be at the end. After hours of driving, an old couple saw him and his motorbike covered in mud. They saw he was lost and exhausted. They didn't speak English, and he couldn't speak Vietnamese. But they saw a person in need and they opened their door. They let him stay the night. We chatted for hours. Then he said, I better head home before I talk too long and get too tired and crash my dad's car on the way home. I added a promotion of his Palestinian Solidarity Organization to the article I wrote on neoliberalism. I had less than 48 hours until my flight. That night I realized I might be able to use the contact he used to rapidly acquire a visa. I messaged him and he sent it. I messaged them. It was 6 a.m. in Vietnam. For me, it was time to rest. It was time to be patient. Soon I would have the answer to whether or not I could hire them to remedy my mistake. Full-on crisis mode had been activated. I stressed for a long time and then went to sleep. When I woke up, I had less than 24 hours to get the visa. I went back to the Vietnamese embassy. It was after 4 p.m. The doors to the Government of Canada building were locked. A key pass was required to unlock the electronic locks. I rushed inside when somebody opened the door and went inside. A white guy in the lobby wouldn't help me and used his pass to send me up in the elevator. It was about 4:30 p.m. I decided to wait for the workers from the embassy, or from the Vietnamese consulate, to come downstairs to ask if I could pay them to head back to the office and return my passport so I could hire the faster service. Time trickled by. I sat on the floor and chatted with the white guy. Based on how determined he was to tell me I was too late and that I'd have to come back early, I would guess that his job must pay a lot. He later went upstairs with some coworker or acquaintance. I was alone in the lobby. Some people came down and left. Some Asian ladies came down. I say to myself, My gosh, I've been around very few Japanese, Chinese, Korean, and Vietnamese people. I cannot recognize if these ladies are Vietnamese behind their masks. It would be very ignorant to walk up to random East Asian ladies and ask if they work at the Vietnamese consulate. I did not approach them. They departed. I walked over to a screen with information about the buildings and services in the building. I searched to see if there are any other Asian companies or organizations that would be likely to be renting this space. I didn't see any that seemed likely. I returned to sit down and bide my time. The worker who had helped me arrived. We talked and she brought me to the office and returned my passport. I was set. I sent the pictures to the speedy service and they began to work their magic. I got my visa with 16 hours to spare until my flight. In the airport, I saw a kiosk with native jewelry and art for sale. I talked with the worker for about 30 minutes. While talking with her, a Chinese lady chatted me up. She lives in Quebec. I told her about the Yoko crisis and when the French Canadians threw rocks at Indigenous women and children, fleeing the 78 government siege against the warriors. She said that her sister would love to talk to me. She asked if we could keep in touch. I excitedly said yes, and we found each other on Facebook. She was visiting her sister who lives in Surrey and had gotten depressed. I told her about the Confederate flag that I used to see on my way to work when I worked in Cloverdale. She left, and I returned to chatting with the worker at the kiosk. I bought a copper pendant of an orca, and she used pliers to take off the little pendant that I had on the necklace and to put on this new one that I borrowed from my mom. I said goodbye. I ate one last Vietnamese dish in Canada. I had lemongrass chicken. It was great, but I used too much fish sauce. I was already queasy from only sleeping 2 hours. I paid $16 and ate about 20% of it. I just felt too ill. I went through customs and it was super chill compared to the US customs, even though US cops were around. It was Valentine's Day. I sat on a tall chair to charge my phone at a convenient island that had many electrical outlets for people to charge their equipment. I say equipment, and people would think of phones, laptops, and the standard things that one uses in an airport. But if you wanted to, you could charge dildos and sex toys. Imagine the nonchalance of somebody with the gall to charge a vibrator in the middle of an airport, near the gate with people waiting, with the mindset of, well, I'm going to be tired when I get to my destination. I want to conveniently come and go to bed. No fucking around. The chair I was sitting on was the same height as tall chairs in bars. I had spun around and was leaning against the island. 4 ladies arrived and stood directly in front of me. When I say directly in front of me, I mean one of the ladies was inches away from me and she bumped into me. They spoke of Valentine's Day, and with joy. All of them were white. I waited for a lull in the conversation so I could smoothly join them. It came. I said to them, "Today is a special day." I waited a second to gauge their reactions. I said, "Today is about the 250th anniversary of the defeat of James Cook, British colonist credited with the colonization of Australia." 3 of them said nothing, but the one that looked the oldest said, "Yes!" She immediately became the one I wanted to talk to. The younger women were more keen to talk with me, but I mainly wanted to talk with that lady. We chatted, and I learned that she used to work with the First Nations Health Authority. My auntie is a regional director of the first FNHA. I asked if she knew her, and she explained that she didn't, but her job sounded wildly cool. I don't even remember what it was, but she explained she learned a ridiculous amount of things, and it was really special. She did it for 4 or 5 years. I say was because she quit that public sector job for some soul-crushing corporate job. I joked with her that you can have a meaningful job, or you can have a job that pays you well enough to go de-stress from that job on vacation. We embark on our journey, and our conversation is cut short by our seats being apart. It was interesting to see this group of women traveling, because usually when it comes to Southeast Asia, it's a group of young white guys traveling. It was pleasant as all hell to see a group of women traveling there together. I nap and feel better, after having only slept 2 hours last night. Our food comes. It was delicious. It also included ice cream. Not just any ice cream. It was Mario Gelatos. I giggled because the Americans I talked to earlier would not know of how awesome the treat of Mario Gelatos was. I could not eat it. I wondered how weird it would be if I wandered around the plane with ice cream to offer some women that I'd talked to earlier. Boredom and the urge to walk, to prevent blood clots for more than 4 hours of sitting, overtook my concern of how weird it might be. I climbed out of my seat and began to wander around the airplane with ice cream. I found the older lady. When I asked her if she's the leader of the group, she laughed and said no. I asked her if she wanted the ice cream and she said no. She was avoiding dairy or sugar or something. She said the other women were closer to the front and on the left, and that they would appreciate the ice cream. I thanked her and walked that way. I found them and gave them the ice cream. They were very grateful and we were happy to talk. We introduced ourselves, and the one sitting farthest away from me said she's from Alaska. I said, "Oh, nice! How many people have you shanked?" She did not hear me, but the lady sitting close to me did, and she burst out laughing. Now, before any readers jump to any phrenology conclusions or biological determinist conclusions, that number is wildly high, partially for a hilarious reason. People in Alaska do not just drink the water and decide a life of crime is right for them. No. Alaska is the most well-known state for being the state that people with criminal records and people with warrants flee to. I generally loathe Alaska because my perception of it is this libertarian hellhole of right-wing rhetoric and manly men who don't organize or try to make things better for people collectively, but instead ramble about freedom, hard work, and rugged individualism. We chat more, and then I head back to my seat. We get fucked. The flight is an hour behind, and our connecting flight is 90 minutes after our first flight. I emotionally prepare to spend a few $100s to sleep terribly in a hotel in Tokyo. I get through customs, and it turns out our second flight was also delayed by an hour. What fortune! I get to the gate with 40 minutes to spare, and the ladies are nowhere to be seen. I talk to a random guy. He taught in Vietnam for years. He agrees to watch my bag while I walk back and try to find the ladies and show them where our connecting flight is. I retrace my steps to try bump into them, and then I exchange some currency. I do not find them. I head back to the gate, and they are just approaching. I've already forgotten their names, but I'm relieved that they will safely make our flight. When I arrive, I lose the opportunity to say goodbye. I stand at the top of the escalator. I see them departing, and I see the older one, who is my favorite one, looking back and waving her entire arm. Goodbye, my friends. I descend the mechanical genius of the escalator and turn left. I buy a new SIM card for about $20 and a phone plan for $5. I cab to my friend's unit. I give him a big hug, pay my cabbie, and go to bed. I was too tired to write for days. Lots happened since the last sentence. I wrote the next page a few days later and forgot most of the events between the 15th and the 18th. The only detail I had written down was that on one of the days, my friend Carson walked in after his shift and said, "I got in a car accident, so I'm grumpy and I'm going to nap."